Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee, where I've lived for many years. And today is Monday, June 30th, I think. Um, yeah, and it's about 8:48, 8:45, something like that in the morning. Let's see, put on my watch here. Yeah, it's almost 10 to 9. Okay. The temperature is going to be not that bad here, but not so good. We're at 80 degrees already, for crying out loud. That's high. 93 is the high, and it'll be like that most of the week. And then next week it clicks down a little bit to highs of 91, which is borderline air conditioning. But this is the way it's going to be until redemption, I'm pretty sure. So, what we're going to cover today is pretty exciting, I guess you could say. We're going to cover some events that happened in America, such as the sniper, and then there's the guy, I think it's the same sniper, he killed two firefighters, wounded another. There was a van in New York City that blew up with a car bomb. There's another shooter, I think, in the state of Washington. Stuff like this is going on, so we're going to take a look at that with the viewpoint of are the shooters already been woken up or activated. Now, Iran, publicly, one of the mullahs over there, one of their religious leaders, issued what's called a fatwa. They view this guy similar to the way the Catholics view the Pope, and he issues what they call a papal bull, which is an order. So he's holding himself out to be God's representative on earth and having power like that, like an apostle or something. Well, the Muslims have their own version of that. And he said in his public fatwa that Netanyahu and Trump are both enemies of God, their God, not my God. Their God's not a real God. And that every Muslim basically has an obligation to kill them. And if you do that, they harm you, the God of Mohammedanism, I don't even want to repeat the name, is going to help you, and that kind of stuff. So basically, they put an open season out on Trump and Netanyahu. Now, Trump had a few assassination attempts. Some he thought were from the Iranians. Now, how do you think Trump's going to react to this? I think he already did. Last night, Iranians heard, and I guess spotted, or at least heard, Israeli fighter jets over the skies of Iran. I believe southwestern Iran, I think. And buildings were on fire. There were also drones. So did the drones cause the fire? Did the fighter jets cause the fire? Did the fighter jets guide the drones? I don't know the whole details yet. But we do know the Iranian air defense systems were highly active during this time. So is it possible that Trump saw this fatwa announcement and then called Benji up and said, go get him? And Benji said, yes, sir, Mr. Trump, I get him now. Is that a possibility? Oh, yeah. Does that mean the Iran war is technically on again? Yeah, it could be. What did Iran say? Well, they said there's no ceasefire. There's just a pause. So, look, there's a lot of stuff to unpack today and see where this is headed. And I'm going to go into the chat now and make sure we got a live stream. and make sure it's working, and we got, sound and picture and all the other little tidbits that we like to have when we have a live stream. Let me get out of where I am. No, I should be okay. Oh, I am where I need to be. Okay. Let's see how we get out of where I am. Well, we got plenty of sound and picture. Um, okay, I'm putting up a post real quick and then we'll get started. But I think the Iran-Israel war is on again when jets are flying over there. Now, we've been having drones flying over there causing explosions and fires in buildings all week, but this is increased now. I think the war is pretty much back on. But let me get my post up and then we'll cover it. I think I'm about done. Let me proof this real quick. Okay, we're done. Being a Bible-believing site, Old and New Testament, I'm going to do some praise, which will undoubtedly cause people to leave the broadcast, and that's the way it is. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay. So let's take into account, why was there a sudden cessation in the Israel-Iran 12-day war? Well, the reason is Trump got scared. Now, you can hate me because I'm speaking bad about Trump. Was Trump a better choice than Biden or Harris? Probably. Better than Obama? Yeah. But he's still got tremendous deficiencies, different than what Biden had, but deficiencies. He's making lies up every day, all day long. It's unbelievable. Like now he's talking about, we're going to have a peace treaty with Hamas in a week. Well, the negotiators don't see that. Hamas doesn't see it. Israel doesn't see it. But he runs around talking like it. They're not, he wants to get Hamas out of Gaza. They ain't going, even if he just wanted to get the top 50 or 100 people out of Gaza. It would probably have to be more like 350 or something, but they ain't going. Nobody's leaving Gaza because Trump or Netanyahu says leave. They go out feet first. That's it. You want to go off into some games of denial, I mean, go ahead, but that's the reality of it. What they're saying, and they've never deviated, is they're saying Israel withdraws out of Gaza first. Then, after they're out, we'll give them all the hostages back. Not one shot. They'll get a few when they pull out, and then in a couple of months later, if everything is copacetic and Israel's still out, they'll get more. That's how they're planning on playing it. It might even be in 3 to 6 months they would give all the hostages back. It might even be they would allow hostages to be inspected by the Red Cross if that happened. Maybe. But they're not going to just pop off the hostages, the living hostages, and, what are they going to do if Netanyahu just says, okay, it calls the army up on the phone, tell everybody to turn around and go back in Gaza? What's the big deal? We're not building, structures and sophisticated bases in Gaza or anything like that. We go out, we can come right back in. They know that. Then Trump has some other harebrained ideas that he wants to get 2 to 4 countries to administer the government in Gaza because he's throwing Hamas out. Not the civilians, Hamas, which would mean also Palestinian Islamic Jihad and probably about 2 or 3 other very small terrorist lunatic groups that are also in Gaza. Okay, so they're miles apart on a deal, and he keeps talking like next week. He's nuts. Why does he say stuff like that? And then he was talking about a 2-state solution using Netanyahu's name, that he talked about it with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu came out with a public announcement in Israel because he was afraid of a vote of no confidence, which is what the Israeli public would likely do if he went for a 2-state solution, which would remove him from office immediately. He would be reduced to what's called an acting or a caretaker prime minister, but they could have a new vote and get a new prime minister in a day or 2 or 3. Okay? As a caretaking prime minister, he doesn't do anything. Okay? He doesn't initiate legislation. He doesn't do anything. He can't start anything. He could continue the war. But because there's a war, they would have a fairly immediate vote in the Knesset, which is our Congress. We have a one-house Congress, 120 seats. If somebody can produce 61 seats out of the 120, then they get to appoint themselves or whoever they want as the next prime minister. Then Netanyahu is no longer a prime minister of any sort. So then his criminal trials proceed. And away goes Netanyahu to the Huskow. And we don't know who the heck the next prime minister would be. Bennett probably, but they tried him a few years ago for 6 months. He was Netanyahu all over again with a new face. That's all. Broken promises, jerking the people around, it's just like Netanyahu. Elijah and Enoch are going to be running the country very soon, and that's going to be good. All right, back to what's going on. So Israel, I think, had to be running low on anti-missile missiles. In other words, the air defense systems that we use to take down incoming drones and missiles with a missile. Iron Dome is the biggest, most widespread one we have all around Israel. And every time a target comes in, we fire 2 Iron Dome missiles at a time at it. Now, when the more sophisticated missiles come up from Yemen or they come from Iran, we track them and we shoot, as the missile progresses, we shoot a pair of missiles at it, then from another location, another pair, till we destroy it. And we would destroy, working against the Houthis, our rate of return was 95% or perhaps 1 or 2 points higher than that. Okay, maybe even 98. Very high. Against the Iranian missiles, the high-speed, hypersonic ballistic missiles, our rate arithmetically of takedown was only 83%. Now, understand, we have a package of anti-missile systems we use. The Iron Dome is first and foremost for close work, then for longer distance, like doing a takedown over another country, like Syria, for instance, we could use the Arrow 2 or the David Sling. And then also, we have a few THAAD systems from America, which is a rather effective long-range takedown system. So we're running 4 systems. You got that? Plus, whenever feasible, we have fighter jets attacking. So the thought that's flying around is that Israel may be running down on these missiles that do takedowns, the THAAD especially. I think we have 3 or 4 THAAD launchers and some missiles. So there's been, since the war stopped, I understand there's been every day cargo planes coming in from America. So what's on the cargo planes? They don't tell us. Why should they? I'm sure a lot of bombs, because we used a lot of bombs up in Iran. We used a lot of bombs in Gaza. So definitely bombs. And maybe anti-aircraft missiles for the THAAD or other things. I don't know. Israel makes the anti-aircraft missiles for the Iron Dome, and I'm sure they're running 24/7, so they're churning them out. I don't know. I don't give a lot of theory. I don't give a lot of credibility to the theory that the war was paused so we can accumulate more anti-missile systems. I think it was paused. Overwhelmingly, I think it was paused because Trump got scared, because the Iranians hit the American military base. They got a building in Qatar and destroyed it. And that's when Trump creates this, I would call it fiction, where, well, I got a call from the Iranians and they asked me if 1 o'clock was okay, and I said okay. And then I evacuated the soldiers out of there, and the Iranians took the building down. Do you think Trump would sit there and tell the Iranians, yeah, you can go attack an innocent country like Qatar and blow up a building over there? I'll take my soldiers out of it so you could look good. Do you think Trump would ever do anything like that? I would say the chances of this being a lie are 99%. They never. The Iranians are gonna ask him for permission for a time to attack. Are you serious? They just issued a fatwa to have him killed. It's all fiction. He's lying. Maybe they evacuated the soldiers to a base because they had intel from drones and flyover flights that Iran was staging missiles and getting ready for an attack. So they took caution and had the guys go into shelter someplace. Then they also shot missiles at the American embassy in Iraq. And I believe they caused some minor damage or close hits or something. They don't talk about their losses, the Americans, right? And then the Iranians were getting ready to shut the Persian Gulf at the Straits of Hormuz, which is a pincher point. I think it gets down to, I want to say, 34 miles, something like that. It may not be 34 miles. I don't think it's bigger than 40 miles. So it's a very narrow area. And the ships, right now, as of today, when they enter the Persian Gulf, they're broadcasting like crazy. We are a Chinese vessel coming to do business and blah, blah, blah. So the Iranians let them in. The Iranians had a record-breaking month of oil sales to China. I believe the June figures are not in yet. It would be the May figures was a record-breaking month. Mucho oil to Iran, which means Iran got bucks. They give the Chinese a good price, but they still got bucks, okay? So Trump got scared. He didn't want to see all this happen. He's scared of the sleeper agents. After the war stopped, he arrested 130 Iranian agents, we'll call them, I think that's what they called them, in America. Now, we got this thing in the, where is it, the Idaho forest. Some sniper guy was out there shooting some, were there two incidents in one? There was an incident where a fire was started. I believe it was in Idaho, a forest fire. Firemen came, 2 firemen got shot dead, 1 was wounded. That was an ambush setup. Then there's also a sniper, I think it could be the same thing, I'm not sure, attacking police in that area of the country too. Seattle has an incident, I'm not up on all the details, and New York City had a van blow up in the streets, and that's a terrorist type attack. Now I'm not scouring the internet for other terrorist attacks, but it looks like combining that with the Iranian fatwa, which is the Muslim equivalent of like a papal bull against Trump and Netanyahu. In other words, a death warrant that every Muslim has an obligation to kill these enemies of God. And don't worry if anything happens to you, the God, and he names the name of their false God, who's not a God, will help you. So he basically called for Trump's head and Netanyahu's head on a platter. Now, how do you think Donald Trump liked that? How do you think Netanyahu liked that? Well, I think they liked it so much. There were Israeli jets over the skies of Iran last night, and buildings were apparently having explosions and fires, and drones were there too. And this has pretty much been going on every night since the war stopped. So Netanyahu doesn't want to let go till Iran's crushed. Now we know the prophecy in Jeremiah 49, I think, verse 34, that Iran's going to get it so bad everybody leaves Iran and they scatter into every country in the world where the sword follows them and they get cut off. On my Telegram site, yes, did I put it up yesterday or this morning? Last night or this morning? My Telegram site is free. Okay, Telegram app is what most people use. It's called Telegram Messenger. It's downloadable from all the places for Android and Apple and Google and all that, right? And it's free. The site is free. Everything is free. If you want access to the site, my email address is in the description box on the lowest line down. It's Israel Giving with the number 7 at gmail.com. Israel Giving with the digit 7 at gmail.com. Just write me in the subject header, put Telegram link. Then I'll email you back the invite link. If you have the app, Telegram Messenger, you click on it, you install the app, and then you click on the invite link, and boom, you'll be brought right into the site. I update that during the war about 25 times a day, really. When it's not war, about 4 or 5 times. You'll know a lot about what's going on in the Middle East with Israel in the Middle East, and you'll get it many hours before it pops up on the social media. Remember, these guys in social media, 98% of them are not in Israel. Okay? Well, 99% of them really are not in Israel. So now when it comes to Ukraine-Russia war, I'm not your greatest source. I cover it lightly. There's better sources for the news than me. My forte or my strength is getting the news, giving you the news, and analyzing it with Bible prophecy to show you where we are in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Okay, and with Russia and Ukraine, I'm not that effective because there's not really much specific or any specific Bible prophecy verses I'm aware of to cover that fight, which is typical. If Israel's not involved, there's very few instances where wars between the countries are depicted, especially in the more recent times. We don't really get into it much in the scriptures. So, is Trump perhaps waiting for those extra 2 aircraft carriers to still come to the Middle East, or did he stop them from coming and turn them back? Honestly, I don't know. They keep warship movements rather quiet. They don't like blasting them out there. So we don't really know much about that. He could have called it off, or they could still be on their way out here. I don't know. And maybe that's what he's waiting for. But he definitely got scared. Okay? Definitely. What next? Well, Iran seems to be afraid to attack Israel with the ballistic missiles. What they're doing is having the Houthis in Yemen do it daily. Now, the Houthis in Yemen, as I covered this yesterday, are apparently depleted in their supply of sophisticated missiles. They're using more inferior missiles. Now, why would this be? Because Iran's missile inventory has been seriously attacked and depleted by Israel. So they're kind of light on missiles right now, okay? and their airports have been hit. Their ports and piers have been hit. The Yemen ports and piers have been hit. Their airports have been hit. It's not easy or even possible at all for the Iranians to fly uh, cargo planes with missiles into Yemen. And there's a high probability that Israel may wait for the cargo plane to land. You know, the cargo plane lands and it doesn't stop for 10 minutes and they pull the missiles off and it takes off. It's there for hours. It needs to refuel and the pilots need coffee and, you know, Israel blow the plane up and the cargo, the missiles. Okay? They get the recon from America and that's it. Blow them up or our own drones or something. So that is something Iran doesn't want to do right now. So they're running out of good missiles and our takedown rate is extremely high. And we're even getting good takedowns over other countries like specifically Syria and probably Jordan and Saudi Arabia. And sometimes the Saudis and the Jordanians do the takedown for us. The Americans, maybe they took down 1% of the missiles, if anything, you know. They got their ships far away from the reaches of the Houthis and the Iranians. They're afraid of losing an aircraft carrier, destroyers, and things like this. The Iranians are back at these nuclear sites making repairs. We got videos of it all over the internet. Trump is saying if they go back and rebuild their facilities, I'm going to bomb them again. Well, Donald, you didn't really do much the first time, but you did do something, that's for sure. Let's see if you got the guts to do it again. I'll be right back. But we know that Iran is making a monkey out of Trump. Okay? That is beyond a shadow of a doubt. They're mocking him. They're using the F word, I believe, or something to that effect. Uh, they don't. They speak Farsi. I don't even know if they got an F word, but they speak very. They speak of Trump in a very insulting manner. They have no interest in being in the IAEA anymore, International Atomic Energy Association or administration. That's part of the UN. They told the head of it he's not welcome in Iran, which probably means he'll get arrested if he goes into Iran. And they removed any and all cameras that were used to film their facility, and they verbalized they have every intention of getting back to nuclear production of weapons grade spent uranium and so forth without any monitoring. Was Trump scared of them closing the Persian Gulf? Probably because he didn't have a good way out of that. If he blew up all their naval vessels, they still had the naval mines. That would be a problem. Oil prices would spike. Stock market would crash, and all his millionaire and billionaire friends would call him up on the phone yelling at him. Maybe. Then he didn't want to see the oil refineries and the ports and piers that the other oil-producing countries in the Middle East use, like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Oman is a friend of Iran. And with the Houthis in Yemen supporting them, and with Iraq, who would maybe support them, they could attack these oil refineries and ports where they offload the oil onto tanker ships and shut down a lot of oil. But why bother attacking the countries when you could just shut the Persian Gulf? So to have oil, how do they get it out? Since the war stopped, the 12-day war stopped, these bums in Iran have arrested 700 Jewish people over suspicion of ties with Israel. Suspicion of ties with Israel. They're making believe like all 700 of these people are Matahari or something like that, you know? Rather idiotic. Why are they doing that? Come on. Why are they doing that? They want hostages and they need them in jail so they know where they are. Leaving the Jews out of this, Iran has executed, since the war stopped, the 12-day war stopped, has executed more civilians in the last few days than the total death count from the whole 12-day war. Are these terrorist type things emerging in America tied to Iran? Are they the sleeper agents? It's looking, since the proof's not in, I would have to say it's looking like a probable. The fatwa basically was saying America and Israel are enemies of Iran, go kill them, and it was also saying go kill Trump and Netanyahu. And of course, if they get killed in the act of committing terrorism to fulfill this fatwa, kind of the Muslim equivalent of a papal bull, then the dead terrorist gets whisked right up to heaven and gets 70 virgins shoved right at him, you know? On my Telegram, I put videos of the Iranian women taking infants, kids that are like 24 inches long, 18 inches long, holding them up, committing them to be martyrs to go kill the Jews, the Israelis, and the Americans. And they're chanting with their babies, holding them up, praying for them to be martyrs. They're chanting death to America, death to Israel. Could somebody please throw some cold water on Trump and see if he wakes up? Let me go in the live stream for a minute. Could you guys please hit the thumbs up button? It takes you 2 seconds. It helps the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. I don't think that's asking too much. Much appreciated. Let's get back into the news. There's so much. This didn't get out in the mainstream media. Remember, there was an American company using Americans to distribute the humanitarian aid in Gaza some weeks ago. Well, 12 of those people were killed by Hamas, and others were tortured because they wanted to handle the food distribution so they could steal it for themselves, let the people go hungry, as in starvation, and then blame it on Israel. We have a prayer request for HR, Hotel Romeo. HR, Hotel Romeo. Prayer request is to get a job at either a company called BD, Bravo Delta, BD, or WM, Whiskey Mike. Prayer request is that HR, Hotel Romeo, gets a job at either BD, Bravo Delta, or WM, Whiskey Mike. So those are the initials for the names of the companies to preserve privacy. I'll tell you right now, Netanyahu is peeved that they put a fatwa out on him. Just a little bit of statistics about Russia and Ukraine war. Russia has lost massive amounts of equipment and soldiers. When you take the dead Russian soldiers combined with the wounded Russian soldiers, you come up with about 1 million, which is what America lost in World War II. About that many, wounded and dead. Serious for Russia. Last night we hit an Iranian ballistic missile base where they launch missiles out of at Israel, for instance. It was hit by drone or drones. So there's always a question, were these drones launched internally inside Iran by revolutionaries against the Khomeini, or did Israel send it over? So the mullah with the fatwa was telling the Muslims around the world that they have a religious obligation to try to kill Trump and Netanyahu, and also attack America and Israel any way they can. That would make me think sleeper agents could be launched or were launched. Now, 1 or 2 days ago, portable walls, you know what I'm talking about, were put up around the White House and the Treasury building. And these are often referred to as anti-climb walls. So it's very, very difficult for somebody to climb over these walls. And we certainly can understand the White House because at the drop of a hat, though, it could be protesters. If the war cranks up with Iran, there's going to be protesters, So they put the wall up. But what we don't understand, at least I don't, and I haven't found anybody else that understands, is why the U.S. Treasury building? Is Trump up to something with the money that we don't know about? The Treasury building? That's not normally a target. But it is what it is. Oh, another terrorist event last few hours. Philadelphia. Houses go boom. 1 casualty reported, and I believe 5 houses were wiped out. It starts out saying 3 row houses. That would make them blue-collar houses, not executive houses, I think. Folded like a bad poker hand, is what the media said, and burst into flames. It was just as terrifying as it sounds. 1 person is confirmed dead, though their identity hasn't been released yet. That's pretty normal. 2 elderly women were pulled out and rushed to the hospital. One of them is in critical condition. The other is stable. A total of 5 houses got wrecked. And firefighters are now trying to make sure the chaos doesn't spread to the rest of the block. I guess the fires. And no one knows what actually caused the explosion. Well, maybe somebody's dog or cat learned how to make explosives, joined Hamas and blew it up. No, I don't think so. What comes to mind? Sleeper agents, Muslim terrorists responding to the fatwa. by the Iranian goofball, the religious leader there. It wasn't Ayatollah Khomeini who issued it, it was another jackass. Ayatollah Khomeini is a half political figure for Iran and a half religious guy. This other guy is like 99% religious, so I think that he would be the more appropriate Slav to issue a fatwa. So, what is my final take on all of this? Yes, sleeper agents are being launched. There's a lot of stuff happening at the same time. Fires are starting around, have been burning around America. I've been telling you for weeks they're on the up and they're still out there. Are they arson or just wildfires? Well, I don't know. You don't know. They don't know. Probably a lot of them would not arson. Maybe some were. I don't know. Shooting at the firefighters. Now, a lot of you aren't old enough to understand about this, but I'll update you. In the very late 1960s, even into early 70, it could have been. I used to live in San Francisco many decades ago, and I had a friend who was a lawyer. And before he was a lawyer, he was a fireman. And the way that would work in many cities is you would go for a shift of perhaps 24 hours, and you would do those twice a week. So you might run 48 hours, 2 days in a row, or something like that, and then that's it for your work week. Or you might run one day and have 2 days off and then do another day. So they would live at the firehouse, they would cook there, shower there, they had a bed there. And, they would watch TV there, or whatever they're going to do there, And then when there was a call, they jumped on the truck and they took off. So you don't normally have fires 24/7, so it's conducive to going to law school. So he went to law school, I think, at night, which takes 4 years, I think. I don't see how he could have gone during the day, because he would have been missing classes, but at night I could see it. And he managed to get out, to get through law school. But when he was a fireman, he was getting shot at in San Francisco by these revolutionaries that were opposing probably the Johnson or Nixon days and the draft in Vietnam. There was black revolutionary groups. There were other groups that weren't black that were doing it, and he was getting shot at as a fireman. So this is an old communist type theme for terrorism. So the ones driving these revolutions in America back then were mostly communists. And I think they're just taking an old tactic from the past: start a fire, wait for the firemen to come and kill them. What does that do? Well, if it happens once every 9 months, it doesn't do anything. If it happens once or twice a week, around the United States, you're running the risk of having the firemen not wanting to go to the fires. Let's say it happens almost once a day in America. They're not going to want to go to the fires. How does that play out? Well, they're going to wait for police backup in large quantities. Like, let's say there's a big fire someplace in a city, and they normally send 3 vehicles and an ambulance or something like that, right? Well, they're going to want like 4, they want one police car for every fire truck. Or they might send 2 fire trucks and 1 ambulance and 1, captain's car or something like that. They're going to want 3 or 4 police cars, 2-man patrol cars to go to the scene. Now, the cops aren't going to help them that much, but it's going to make the firefighters think they're getting a lot of help. Basically, the drill with the cops is going to be, if there's snipers, it's long-range fire. Any idiot sniper worthy of his sniping is going to stay out of range for pistol fire. So, if any of you guys are pistol shooters, I want you to know that the very experienced pistol shooters, even with a 2-inch 38 special revolver, can hit at 100 yards. A torso. Yeah, they can. A lot of New York City cops spend a lot of time on the range learning how to shoot the years past the 2-inch revolver. And they would get good enough to be able to hit at 60, even 100 yards. Now, a guy that performs in the circus or a famous trick shooter, he could go. I've seen them go 200 yards with this, but that's insane. But anyway, if you're 100 yards away from the police, their pistols are going to be relatively of no effect. Not saying that they're going to hit you with the bullets lost velocity and they're going to bounce off your shirt. No. I'm saying they're not going to be able to hit you. Maybe 2% of a police department has, let's call them ninjas, that run around learning how to shoot like that. It's very rare. SWAT guys can usually, but they have long guns. So until SWAT shows up, these guys are free to keep shooting. Now, they might even go out 200 yards. Then forget it. The cops are going to even have trouble trying to see where they are. Okay? And when SWAT shows up, they can pack up and leave. Meanwhile, the fire's burning. And they're hiding behind their fire trucks, behind the water tanks in their fire trucks, to make sure they don't get killed. Hang on a minute. You okay? Yeah, I'm on the air. I could hear you. What? I couldn't hear you. You're breaking up. Right. Oh, okay. It's good thinking. Oh, even if it's another 30 or 40 shekels, go for it. Right, right. Okay. Keep in touch. All right, bye. my wife taking the bus to go to a cryo place for cryotherapy, and she's traveling out there, and then they called her and said they ran out of gas. They use, I think, nitrogen gas to make the cold air. It's a cryo chamber, but anyway. So she's going to go to another place and hope she could get in and this kind of thing. Anyway, let's get back. So, anyway, so they start an arson situation, or they don't even have to do arson. They just phone a fire in, and the firemen go to respond. And, in Israel, when you phone a fire in, a lot of times the police come first. Now, if 8 or 9 people are calling and saying, fire here, well, then they'll just send the firemen probably. But they'll send the cop first, and he'll say, yeah, there's a fire, and then they'll... So once I was reporting a brush fire in a vacant lot, and it was many years ago, so I called them up. They wanted to know what my name was and my phone. I gave them all the information. I was looking at the fire. And they didn't just send the fire truck, they sent the police. And the police came and they saw the fire. So they got on, I was watching the cop, he got on the mic and started saying, yeah, we got a fire, get him out of here, So it was right adjacent to the building I was staying in. I didn't want the building to burn. So they got it put out, So they could just put a false alarm in and the firemen come out and then they just plink at them as snipers. What does it do, though? It stops and hinders and delays the firemen. The more delay time you put into the equation, the worse the damage is from the fire, and the more time it takes to put it out, and the more damage from spread happens. Now, are they going to start putting bulletproof vests on the firefighters? I'm thinking. They might, but they'd have to put a very serious vest on them. I think you need a level 3. Because you'd have to stop rifle bullets, which is hard to stop. Okay? Now, the vest, to make it effective, would go down to about the belly button, come up here with a neckline, go over the area here, and it would have Velcro buckles, so to speak, and it would cover the sides, the rib, and the back. And you're probably looking at 8-9 pounds. They wouldn't use the steel plate. The steel plate without the carrier, I know the weight, is 14 pounds. Now the steel is better than the ceramic crap, than the soft stuff they use, because the steel just bounces the bullets repeatedly over and over. So if a guy came and sprayed you, with 5 or 6 round bursts, it would just break them, bounce them off. But the soft ones, they might break down. I don't know. Depends what they're using. And at distance, in my opinion, having good knowledge of these things, it would be highly feasible that such a vest would stop the rifle bullets. But what it would not do is it would not stop rounds that went into, say, the guy's leg or his arm or his head or the woman. It would just stop at the torso. So they could, now, with the exception of the head and the neck, because you usually don't stop the neck, the wounds to the arm and the leg are normally not as serious as those to the torso, because in the torso you're hitting the heart, maybe the lungs, stuff like that. The lungs start filling with blood, good night. The heart gets hit, good night. Stuff like that. Where if the leg gets hit, yeah, you can get an artery, but it's not that common. And you could shatter the bone and, all this stuff, but the survivable rate is way the heck higher than getting a torso round from a rifle. And what it would also do is give a greater sense of security to the firemen, but it also would destroy the morale of the firefighters because they're sitting there saying, what's this become? Now the job is so bad that I got to wear a bulletproof vest under all my other gear. In the summer, I got that heavy coat on, I got this, I got that, and now I got to put a bulletproof vest on underneath that. It's got to weigh at least 5 pounds, 6 pounds, And they're probably going to cost $600-800 a vest. I don't know what happened. Well, if they wear them under their raincoat, under their fireman's coat, they probably wouldn't get wet. It's pretty weird, They got to do investigation. What happens to a level 3 or whatever the level you need to stop a rifle? It used to be 3A or 3. What happens? There's level 4 too. Maybe you need a level 4. What happens if the vest gets exposed to fire? Does it melt and injure the person worse? That has to be investigated, The one I used to have had 2 7-pound steel plates, and they weren't that big. They were like 10 by 14. It didn't cover the sides, right? But it would bounce bullets off. It's the bulletproof vest is gonna work. The nice thing about the steel vest, the metal plates, is if some Weisenheimer shoots an arrow at you, and that happens. And I don't care if the guy's got a 70 or a 90-pound bow. I don't care what kind of thing he has. It's bouncing off my steel plates. I don't have it anymore, but it would bounce off the steel plates. If the guy got me with a sword, let's say he was a real ninja, and he came charging at me, and he slashed onto the plate, nothing would happen, or he damaged his sword, that's all. Or if he tried to stab me. Now, regular vests don't work on punctures. Let me explain. I was in the gun business 35 years ago, and in America, and the bulletproof vests were a few years old. And I'll tell you what happened when they first came out. Okay, and you'll probably laugh, and it's sad, but I could see why people would laugh. The guys would get issued their vests by the department, They would say, try it on, make sure the size right, and the lieutenant or the sergeant would make sure they knew how to close it. And they'd put it on, and, they could take it home with them, just like the uniform, They didn't have to leave it at the station. So they took the vest home. They put it on, and they, walked around, looked in the mirror, made the adjustments. And there was so many that did this. They went into the kitchen and took a kitchen knife, and they plunged it in themselves to see how it would stop the knife. It didn't. It went in. Most of them got a penetration, maybe an inch, a half inch. They didn't get. There was probably almost no fatalities from this, or probably none. But they did get it to penetrate the body. It would slow the knife down. These cops were forgetting to tell them that it didn't work against edged weapons. Like if you have an ice pick, you could just take the ice pick and, go like that, and it'll just slide right through a bulletproof vest. But it's pretty hard to stop somebody with an ice pick unless you get it in the, like in the back of the head, right under the brain, right under the skull, and it goes in the brain, or you get them in the heart, or you get them maybe at the carotid, or puncture the throat area, the trachea gets punctured, stuff like that. It's, when they do it and they don't get it in the brain or something, they're normally plunging the ice pick in the person like, you know, 12 times or more, and then it'll get them. Again, it depends what they hit, but the then they also came up with different kinds of bulletproof vests. This didn't happen until around late 90s or early 2000s. Bulletproof vests for like Coast Guard and Marine Patrol cops and stuff like that. It was a regular bulletproof vest that was also a flotation device, like a life preserver. So if they fell in the water off the boat, let's say they got wounded and they fell in the water and they were knocked out or something like that, the vest would keep them afloat and they wouldn't sink. Then also around the same time, in the late 90s, I think, they came out with puncture-proof vests. Now, these were not bulletproof vests or bullet-resistant or armor vests, or whatever we want to call them. These were to prevent stab wounds. They looked just like a vest. They would wrap around the sides, go in the front and the back. And because these were for correction officers, because in the prisons, the chances of encountering an inmate with a gun is extremely small to just about non-existent, or maybe even non-existent, unless they get one away from a corrections officer somehow. And they make various they don't really make edged weapons where you're going to go in and slash. That's too hard. They make a puncture weapon, like a stabber. And that's what these vests are designed to do, stop a weapon from puncturing. So they won't let an ice pick style weapon through. They're pretty interesting, but they won't do beans for a bullet, and they'll probably help you sink if you fell in water. But they would be useful if you worked in a prison and you worried about knife. Now, I do think that there's at least one or two companies that make puncture-proof and bulletproof vests, but that's probably going to run over $1,000. It's probably going to be bulky and heavy, and I've never really come across one, but it would be useful to a cop, I suppose. The steel plates are a rough ride because you don't want to walk around all day wearing two 7-pound steel plates. With the plate carrier, you're probably up to about 16, 17 pounds. And they don't bend, they don't move. They're pretty tough to wear. And then you have issues if you're in a car and you put that belt, the shoulder belt on, it's going to cross over the metal plate. And then at a high impact, when you throw them forward against against your belt, it's going to shove that metal plate back up against you. And I don't know what would happen, but I can tell you it can't be good. So anyway, that's why they're hitting the firemen. It's a terrorist move. It may be the beginning of this to try to get the firemen to be hesitant to go to the fires without a lot of police protection. All the police are going to do, if you got 3 or 4 fire trucks and you got 4 cars of cops there, all the cops are going to do is tell them to take cover. The cops will take their guns out, get on the air, take cover, and try to see where the guy is and see if they can hit him with a bullet, and they probably can't. Now, a lot of cops do have assault weapons in their trunk. And if they go to the trunk and they get their weapon, like an M16 or something like that, right? Uh, can they hit the guy? Yeah. The first question is, do they have iron sights or glass, optics? If they got iron sights and the guy's been in the military and knows what he's doing, he could go out 300 yards and hit. Okay. Uh, how many of those guys really know what they're doing? I don't know. If he doesn't know what he's doing, he's going to need, something like a 2x4 power scope. And if he knows how to use the scope and it's sighted in and he understands what range it was sighted in at, uh, probably they sight the thing in at 60 to 100 yards. So you'd have to compensate if the guy was 200 or 300 yards away. And they could actually kill the guy if they could find him. And if the guy keeps shooting, they will likely locate him. And then they'll initially try to put a round through the window if it looks safe, and then send other people over there on foot to try to break in and stuff like that. But the more of this they do, the less gung-ho the firemen are going to be, and that means the fires get worse. And they may not want to, go there. I mean, I don't know. Once they hear a bullet, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work, but I can tell you it's designed to stop the efficiency of the firemen, and it's probably going to do that. But it's going to take multiple repeat incidents. It's not going to be one incident. It's going to have to be a bunch of them in the country. Or if they want to shut it down in a state like Idaho or a certain state, they have to do a number of these in the same state, and then the firemen in that state are going to say, wait a minute, I ain't. The idea is to get them to phone in sick, to get the blue flu, but it would be the red flu with the firemen, and, stuff like that. Early retirement, sick leave, PTSD leave, and stuff like that. But let's see if this is a random incident or it's going to continue, because it's an effective tactic if you're going to use fires. And we know fires are a big deal in what destroys the daughter of Babylon. We don't know who lights the fires. Does God send fire and brimstone, or do people do it? We don't know yet. Is it both? I don't know. It's concerning, and it may be nothing, but I doubt it. Who lights an arson fire, waits for the firemen to come, and then plinks at him and then shoots at the cops and other things? Apparently he got killed eventually. They had a helicopter going after him and stuff like that. Did they tell us who he was? Did they say his name was, Michael Brown or something like that, or Muhammad Mahmoud or something? They're not telling us. I have a feeling his name might be Muhammad, but we don't know. We don't know. Okay, hold on a minute. I got some email I got to look at. It's about prayer requests. We have a woman named GK, Golf Kilo, GK, Golf Kilo, GK. The prayer request is that she could find a good lawyer. That's the prayer request. I have something I want to add into this. I think this woman is going astray, possibly. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the facts. I don't need to know them. But Yeshua says, settle with them on the way. My experience is the judges are all S-bots, all of them. And 99%, if I'm missing one or two here or there, or 95%, they're practically always an S-bot, if not always, depending on where you are. And many of the lawyers are. And it's banging your head against the wall a lot of times. I don't know what happened and how the woman was wronged or anything like that, but we prayed and she didn't come out too good in her court case. She has to still continue the case. So I don't like putting prayer requests out to get a good lawyer because I'd much rather see people not go to court and settle on the way. I really can't state this strong enough. So I would also add to GK, for GK, if possible, she settles on the way to the court. Because, as a believer, if she is a believer, which I think so, you can destroy yourself with these court cases and wind up throwing your money down the toilet. Because it's like going to Las Vegas and gambling and thinking you're going to win. I mean, it's moronic. They cheat, and they cheat in the courts. If the courts weren't controlled by the S-bots, they wouldn't have them. Don't you see that? This is not a good thing. So I don't know if you guys want to pray or not pray, but I don't particularly want to do this prayer because it's not, in my opinion, a good prayer. I don't know what happened, okay? If the woman was walking down the sidewalk and some truck came up and ran her over, well, she wouldn't be having a big struggle over this. There would have been a settlement. So I don't know what's going on, but if I hear a believer is getting gung-ho on going to court, it's usually going to be a disaster. I mean, unless it's something really blatant, so I don't know, but I'm reluctant to pray for this. I think I would pray that she find a different way out of it. It's generally a mistake. If somebody's suing you, that's one thing. Yeah, and you try settling with them and you can't, and they're unreasonable, then you've got to defend yourself, okay? But I don't like it, okay? I don't like it. But I put the prayer request out because I was asked to, but I'm also putting my caveat out. I wouldn't pray for this. I don't like it. If the person's not a believer, I like it even less. Okay? I don't like getting involved with the courts. I don't ever want to tell somebody, hey, let's go to court, get a good lawyer, and go sue them. I don't ever want to do that. So I put it out because someone asked me to, but I'm not going to pray for that. That's probably the only time you really ever heard me say I'm not going to pray for that, because I know from my own experience what happens when you start going out and getting lawyers and start with, I'm going to go get them. It's like trying to win in gambling in Vegas, Oh, people win occasionally, but, it's not anything I want to do. Okay. Please hit the like button, the thumbs up. It helps. I appreciate that. If you could do that, it takes you 2 or 3 seconds. Is that too much to ask? So this is basically what I see going on. And I think that Israel's going to be doing soft attacks on Iran. What do I mean by a soft attack? Well, I don't think they're going to get 50 planes and go over there and start carpet bombing Iran right now in these times and days. I don't see that. Okay? But I do see small attacks every day, just to keep reminding Iran, and they're probably, like we hit a ballistic Missile facility. Okay, So you see, Iran had, when the war stopped, something. Israel's saying 1,000 ballistic missiles left. I'm saying maybe it hit as high as 1,200 or something. But we've been hitting strategic locations for missiles since the war stopped, so we might have knocked it down by 2 or 3 or 400. I don't know. The idea, what Israel's trying to do is twofold. Get the launchers, which are mobile launchers, on trucks, like a Peterbilt, a Mack truck, a cab, and a low boy trailer that has 1 or 2 missile launchers on it with a missile, right? And they drive them around. It's mobile. Now, it's not highly maneuverable, but you could hide it in a building, in an underground parking lot, in a warehouse, and the aircraft and the drones ain't never going to find it. If it's in underground parking and in a warehouse or something like that, or a big parking garage, or, they ain't finding it. Then when they get ready to do an attack, they guise the crew that launches the missile and drives the truck and operates the generator, and I think it has a little radar unit on it that they need to get the missile started. They get on the truck, and maybe they have a follow car. I don't know. Maybe the truck is a dual cab, so they could put 3 in the back seat and the driver plus 1 in the front. It could be that way too. And then they drive the missile launcher to what they consider to be an optimum location, which would probably it could be anywhere in Iran, and then launch at Israel. But as soon as we detect that missile launcher turned on, i.e. the radar, I guess, our fighter jets, if they're in the area over Iran, would zoom in on it and hit it with rockets and missiles. And the idea is to stop the launch, foremost, first choice, stop the launch. And then the second thing that's very important is to destroy the missile launcher. Because you could have millions of missiles, but you're limited by how many launchers you have. And what does the scripture in Jeremiah 49, verse 34 say? The Lord will break the bow of Elam. Elam is Iran and can include Iraq and Syria. The bow is the bow. The arrow is the missile. And the bow is the missile launcher. So he's breaking the bow, the missile launchers. So that's what Netanyahu and our military are focusing on, which is 101% absolutely correct military tactics. It's perfect. That's exactly what you want to do, is stop the launches. That's what we were doing with Hezbollah and Hamas. You get those launches, you accomplish a lot. Okay? But they're hard as heck to get. And I don't know how many more they have, but they got a lot of them, and we've been taking them down. We even took some down that we spotted on the freeway. The planes were just flying around by the freeways in Iran during the day and looking for these things being moved around and then attacking them on the freeway, which is easy for the fighter jets to do. They just get a lineup, get a radar lock, fire a small missile at it, or a rocket or something, and it hits the launcher of the truck, and boom, and the thing falls over and rolls over, and that's the end of it. It takes months to rebuild these rocket launchers. They're pretty sophisticated. They got a lot of electronics. They have to be sturdy. They have to, work off the generator. It's a complicated thing. The Hamas thing in Gaza, I think, is a dead end. There's not going to be any ceasefire because they're not going to take Witkoff and Trump's deal in a way that would get Israel to accept it. Then it's not going to happen. I don't see it. Israel told Iran they would hold them responsible for whatever their proxies did, and the Houthis are shooting at us, so we're shooting at Iran daily by sending planes and drones in there and attacking buildings. What else can I tell you? I expect escalation in the war against Iran. Hamas, I don't know what Netanyahu's doing over there, blowing up buildings all the time, targeted assassinations. That's Hezbollah usually once a day. Once a day we blow something up in Lebanon. Weapons that Hezbollah has, or maybe they're attempting a missile launch, or we do a targeted assassination. Syria is quite quiet. Iraq is quiet. Netanyahu is saying there's going to be a substantial attack coming on the Houthis. I see that, but I don't think it's going to be that exciting. I'm thinking maybe 8 or 12 jets, and they'll find some interesting targets. Rebomb the airport, shut that down. Rebomb the piers. Maybe hit some sites they know about in Yemen that they could damage. I don't know what else they're going to do. Maybe they got some 5,000-pound bunker busters and they'll go after some underground facility with repeat hits, but I don't think it'll be very effective. That's about it. And I think Yemen knows that, the Houthis know it, and they're not very worried about it. And the Iraqis are staying out of it right now. And I think Trump is peeved, and so's Netanyahu, about the fatwa and them rebuilding their sites blatantly. You see people working, trying to repair the sites. Some of the people are saying they destroyed the ductwork in the entrances, and that's all that needs to be fixed. And then they turn the reactors on again, and that might take months. Not a lot of them. A month or two, may take 2 or 3 weeks even, I don't know. Part of Iran's phony images, that they're like, Tarzan of the jungle, Tarzan of the Middle East. But they're all busted up, and they're going to get busted up again. Netanyahu's not finished with them. Netanyahu wants to go back and hand them their head. More infrastructure will probably be damaged. The bad news is, the way it stands now is these idiots in Iran are going to go back to launching at us 3 times a day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missiles each time. And they caused a lot of damage in Israel. So maybe Netanyahu's trying to do this soft fighting where we're not appearing to be a war, but we are. And he goes in there and hits 2 or 3 targets a day and has the opposition people that work with Mossad or whatever in Iran attack also, or instead of us, or with us, or whatever. And try to damage as much with the missiles and the drones as he can before the war breaks up. And when it breaks up, it'll be 40, 50 jets going in initially and bombing like crazy. And, the Iranians aren't going to come to their knees and beg. It's, stupid. Well, let's see what the chat's got. I appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button, guys. That doesn't take much effort. It's a lot of work putting this stuff together, and you're getting a lot of news that you're not getting from other sources. Because I live in Israel, and I'm getting stuff out of social media, so it's very fast. It's up to date. It's accurate, and you're not getting it from these other people. They don't quite understand the Middle East, and you know, it's not coming in at the same level. So there's 58 people in here, and I don't know how many thumbs up I got because it doesn't. Maybe if I hit this, it'll show me. No, I can't tell on this iPad. But please pray for me and my wife, for our peace, safety, protection, joy. Pray for healing of our bodies, which we both need. Pray for our finances, which is always important. Pray for our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole, and safe and secure. And, pray we don't get hit with any explosives, the car or the property or the house or the animals. They freak out when the missiles fly and the sirens go off, the poor things. And the iron domes are going off in the air. You hear an explosion. Boom, 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 boom. The dogs go crazy. You got to put them in the house. And then Beulah jumps up on the bed or hides. And the mommy dog crawls deep under the bed because she's convinced that nothing could hurt a dog if they're under the bed. And that's what they do. The birds kind of roll with it better than the dogs do. So pray about that for us, and please hit the thumbs up button. Come on, guys, it helps a lot for the channel. It doesn't take you any effort. It's 2 seconds of work. Come on. And pray for better videos, that the Lord gives me more insight into prophecy and the Bible. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Now, I don't do the let's stand in the gap prayer request thing here. Why? Because we know how things end in Bible prophecy. We know that we can't pray against God's will. And we know God's will is Bible prophecy as written in the scriptures. So we know what's going to happen. So what's the deal? It says one place in the Bible, the Lord was looking for somebody to stand in the gap for Israel so he wouldn't destroy them, and nobody did. But this is not about destroying Israel. It says in the scriptures, I will not leave you altogether unpunished. That's a written scripture. If we start crying to God to not do that and leave us unpunished, he would become a liar. So what am I going to do? Tell you to stand in the gap for that? It makes no sense. Tell you to stand in the gap that the daughter of Babylon and Iran and Yemen, which is Edom in the Bible, get destroyed. We know that's going to happen. And we know when the bad ones in Israel are going to get destroyed. One thing we could try is we could pray that the government of Israel would submit to the 2 witnesses when they emerge. That's a thought we could try. But they're evil and wicked and despots, and I don't think it'll work, but we could try. And that's why I don't have you go sitting here and standing in the gap. Now, you could pray for the 700 Jews in Iran that they have arrested, plus other Jews living there. That would be a good prayer. To pray that they don't get taken hostage and they can get out of there. But we do spiritual warfare, which these other places don't do. some of these characters run around and want to raise money to buy the soldiers' equipment. Oh, on the surface, that doesn't seem that bad, but why should we try to motivate the people of Israel to trust more in their military instead of God? See what I'm saying? I'm different than them, but I'm way the heck more biblical than they are. So I hope you got something out of this. You might want to subscribe because if things break out quickly, and they might, I'll start doing emergency live streams during the day, and then you might want to get notified. Telegram's going to keep getting updated as per normal. And thank you for hitting the thumbs up. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. And I really hope you got something out of this. And you really need to put your seatbelts on, because this time, if it breaks out with war with Iran, it's going to be much worse than the last 12-day war. I would say it'll be enhanced threefold, even if it's just Israel. All these cargo planes coming in could have been a lot more bombs for Israel. So Israel used a lot of bombs up on Iran, and they're using a lot up in Gaza and a little bit in Lebanon. So let's see what happens. Okay? It doesn't appear that peace is in the air. Okay? It appears quite strongly a bigger, stronger war is in the air, and Yemen got to go. For Elijah to start working and training the Levites, the ability for Iran and Yemen to launch missiles at us has to be gone. A ceasefire with them is completely unreliable. A destruction on them is quite reliable. And that's where I think it has to go. And then Elijah and Enoch will emerge openly as the two witnesses. So you read Malachi 3 and 4 and read Zechariah 12 and you'll get the idea. Zechariah 12 is where we are now. That's Jacob's trouble, but it's not yet in its fullness. Not at all. Far away from it, I think. And Malachi 3 shows you Elijah training the Levites, shows you the next temple getting put here by Father God Jehovah. We don't build it. It's right in there. Okay, you could also read Ezekiel 37, the last 3 verses. Talks about this also. And Malachi 4. And in Zechariah 12, verse 6, you read about the 2 witnesses burning up the enemies of Israel that's surrounding Israel, causing the siege on Israel, not an invasion. So it's a real lot of material. So anyway, I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I really sincerely hope you got something out of this, and I'll keep you updated. And thank you for hitting the thumbs up button. And yeah, we got 67 people in here, 31 hit the thumbs up button. Guys, can't you take the 2 seconds and hit the thumbs up button? Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm out. Thanks.